Hey guys, welcome back to How to Build a Blog with Laravel. This is part number 16, and it's time to finish up the read portion of our CRUD. So we've been working on the posts for our blog posts. We've been working on the CRUD for it. We got it all so you can create new blog posts. We've got it so you can view or show individual or read individual blog posts. And now it's time to finish up the read by showing all of the blog posts. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so I know it's been a while since the last video. There more are coming. I've been using the excuse that I've been busy. I know it's very true though. I literally am getting home so late that I don't have time. I can't make another video. But I've got this weekend to make a bunch of videos for you guys for the week ahead. So we've got basically, I'm going to whip out like 5 or 6 videos this weekend so that you guys have videos all of next week, which will get us pretty far in our application. And I'll be in Vegas next week. So for work. So anyway, I'm going to be swamped all next week. So I got to catch up this weekend. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned in the introduction, we are going to be working on the index portion of our blog posts, or of our post CRUD. To see what we're talking about, let's kind of head on over into our blog project file. So if we just go under, I've opened up terminal here, we're going to open up our sites folder and then go into the blog folder. If we ls that blog folder, we can see that this should look familiar. It's a Laravel project now. And if I just go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up in Sublime. You can do whatever text editor you want. We're going to go and open it up and get started. Let's head on over, first of all, to our controllers. So app HTTP, controllers, and then a post controller, because that's the one we're working on. And you can see here that our index is empty, but we've finished up our create. We've learned how to store the new items that we create. We can show an individual blog post. That's part of the read. And then to finish up the read of CRUD, we need to read all the blog posts and see what all the posts we have currently, what they are. Now, one side note I want to take is that everything we're working on right here is basically going to be the back end of our blogging system, okay? We don't have an authentication system set up yet, but we will in a few videos. We'll start working on the authentication system. So showing the individual blog post with the button for edit and delete and stuff is obviously only something that's going to be visible on the back end of our website for logged in users. Public users will have a different view, and that's something separate, which is almost identical in how it works, but it's a different styling and some different route files and stuff, which we will be working on coming up. We will have a public front end and a private back end, okay? So just keep in mind, what we're working on is the private back end, which means that this index file shows all the blog posts that we currently have, and it will allow us to, as if we were like a user, to view and edit those blog posts as well. But this isn't designed to be the index for the whole website. Just to clarify, this is the back end kind of type of thing. Okay. Now for index, if we want to see all the blog posts in our database, you can kind of imagine what we would have to do. In fact, let's go ahead and just work on it right now. So I like to use comments to kind of show what we're going to be doing coming up. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to create a variable and store all the blog posts in it from the database. Okay, so we need to go out to the database, grab all the blog posts, store it in a variable, and then we're going to return a view and pass in that the above variable, basically. The variable that has all the blog posts, we need to pass that into the view, and then when we get into the view, we'll basically manipulate that data and start showing it to the user. So that's all we really need to do for the controller. Let's go ahead and code it up now. So to create a variable and store all the blog posts in it, it's easy. We know how to create a variable. Let's create a variable called posts, and it's because it's going to store all the posts. So we're going to call it posts with an S at the end, so it's plural. What we're going to be doing later when we get to our view is we're going to extract a single post out of the variable called posts, and that's why I like to call this variable post with an S at the end, is because it represents all the posts and not a single post, but we'll be working with a single post later. Okay, so I want it to be posts, and then soon we'll create another variable called post in the future, okay? So post plural, set that equal to our basically all of the posts in the database. So we need to use eloquent like we did below. If you remember down here, we used post find to find a single blog post. Well, how are we going to find all the blog posts? Simple. We can just do post all, and that will pull all the blog posts from the post table, okay? And store it into this posts variable. Simple enough, guys. Next, all we got to do is return the view. Well, we know how to do that. We've been doing that all day, you know what I mean? So we'll return a view. That's not how you do it. Return a view. And then what's the name of the view that we want to work with? Well, we've got a convention here. We've got all of these views stored in our posts folder. And then this one is going to be called index. Now, we don't have it created yet, but we'll create it in a second. And last thing we need to do is we return the view, check, and last thing is pass in the variable up here, this post variable. So we're going to pass it in. We're going to use the with to tell it to pass something in. What are we going to call it? Well, let's call the variable posts. Same thing with an S at the end. And then set that equal to the variable up here called posts. So we're going to call it variable posts. And that's all you got to do to it. Add a semicolon at the end, and our controller is done. That's all it takes to create our index page, from the controller standpoint at least. Let's go ahead and just clean that up and save it. And we've now got our post controller all done. Now it's time to work on the view because that's what we're going to pass into, but we don't currently have an index in our post view. So let's come on over and we're going to go into our views, which is under resources, views, and then posts. And you can see we have create and show, but we don't have index. Not a surprise. Let's go ahead and create a new file. Click new file and save. We're going to call this index.blade.php. Save it right here. And now we're going to use Blade to kind of piece together this file. We're going to use extends. And extends tells it to use the main template file, okay? Because we're going to pass in main, which means go out to the main file. And then right here, this main.blade.php, use that as a template. Okay. In our template, we've got a couple sections that we need to work with. One is called title. So let's go ahead and set title. We're going to set it equal to all posts like that. And that way the title on top of the URL will match what we're working on. And then the second section that we need to work on is called content. And this is the main content of the blog post, of the index page. I'm gonna go ahead and just finish up this section, and we can either do end section like we've been doing, or a couple of you guys have noticed that the Laravel documentation prefers that you use stop, so we can also use stop, but they both work, so it doesn't matter which one you want to use. They both work exactly the same at this point in Laravel. All right, inside of this content is where we can go ahead and start creating stuff. So if we think about it, we've already got like the navigation and all that stuff set up. That's part of the template. So the main section of our content, we basically want to have a headline, an H1 at the top that says what the content's going to be. And then I also want to make next to the headline, to that all posts, I want to create a button that would then go to create a new post. And it will say like create new post. And we can click that to create a brand new post. And then below that, below the title and the button, will have all of the posts that you can view. So first things first, let's create a row that we're going to have all of our headline in. And then inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create kind of a left aligned title and then a right aligned button. So in order to do this, I'm going to create a 10 column section, 10 columns in our grid, and that will represent the title. That'll give our title plenty of space. And then the last 2 columns is where we're going to put the button. Okay, so let's do column MD10. That creates a 10 column section of our grid. Inside of that portion, we can create an H1 and we'll just say all posts. And then down in the same row, let's go ahead and just finish up our 12 column grid with a MD12 or MD2, I mean. What I do here? Clicking the wrong key is what I did. And then inside of here, we can create a button that says create all posts. Let's go ahead and do it. So we're going to do an anchor tag, and then we're going to create a class of BTN. That creates a button in Bootstrap. BTN LG creates a large button. BTN block makes the button full width, so it's going to be the full width of those 2 columns. And then The last one is to give it a color. We'll do btn primary and just makes it that blue color so it kind of stands out. Inside the content of that link, we'll say create new post. And then we just need to work on the href. So for the href, we can go ahead and we'll go use our blade syntax inside of here. And we'll use a helper called route. So route allows us to basically pass in a named route, and then it will automatically generate the URL from that named route. Let's go ahead over to our terminal and just take a look at our routes one more time. If we're in our blog project, we can do php artisan route list, and then we'll just need to make this a little bigger, like that. Okay, and we just need to create a new blog post, which is post.create, and you can see that that's where it's going to take us. So under here, we can just do a string post.create, like that. And that's it. And now it's going to link to create a new blog post. Let's go ahead and before we finish out this row, let's go ahead and just create a headline or an HR, which creates a nice little line. And then that'll close off our row and we'll be all done. Let's go ahead and save. And let's go over to, let's open up a web browser here. Open it up. And then I'm going to go to localhost 8000. Okay, I don't have my server up and running. So we need to open up the server so it works. So let's go ahead and create a new tab in our terminal. And then we're going to, in Mac, when you create a new tab, it automatically puts you in the same project file you were already in. So I'm already in blogs. So I can do php artisan serve. We've got it up and running. So now if I refresh, we get our blog, which is awesome. And then the last thing we want to do is just head over to our index page, which is under posts. So if we just go /posts, you can see we've got all posts here. We've got a button here. We've got an H1 here. That's actually, I think, the footer H1 though. So our H1's not, our HR is not showing up, but that's okay. We'll work on that in a second here. And then we've got create new post over here. The one thing I'm noticing is the create new post is not quite in line with the headline. We can see why if we inspect element. We can see that the H1 has obviously margin around it. And if we go to the button here, the button doesn't have any margin around it. So we just need to add, it looks like here you can see there's 20 pixels of margin. So if we added, say, there's a little bit extra space here, like maybe 18 pixels of margin, it would line up perfectly. Let's go ahead and just do that real fast. So what we haven't done yet, ironically, is we actually haven't created an external style sheet to start styling our custom styles in. Let's go ahead and create that right now. Now, if you remember, I don't know if I've talked about this yet, but all of our style sheets need to be under our public folder and then in this folder called CSS. Let's create a new file in there and we'll save it and we'll call it styles.css. And then that goes into the CSS public folder, which means this can be accessed at just our root domain /css/ and then the file name, okay? Inside of here, we can go ahead and we can actually start styling it. So let's come over to our index here and let's just add a new class on here. We'll call it btn h1 margin or spacing. So that if a button is next to an H1, it's spaced correctly. All right. So we've created a new class, and now I'm going to go into our styles, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to access that class, H1 spacing, and then we're just going to simply do a margin top of, say, 18 pixels, like that. Go ahead and save that. And that's all we really need for the style sheet. And that should add 18 top pixels to the top of this button. Now, the one thing we haven't done yet is we haven't added that style sheet to our page, okay? Now, I want to be able to add some more CSS to that page in the future. So instead of adding it only to this specific index page, we're going to actually add it to the template file so that that style sheet is available to every page on our website. So to go open up our template file, just come down here to main.blade.php. You can see that actually we've actually partialed this out. So it's actually saved in our head partials. So let's come over to partials and then head. And here's the link for the bootstrap. And then underneath that, what I want to do is in case I need to override some bootstrap or something, we're going to create the CSS link for our for that page we just created. So one way we can do that is if we do our blade syntax, we can actually, there's a nice little helper called HTML and style. And if we do style here, we can pass in the name of that style sheet that we created, and it will automatically create a style sheet link just like this up here. So what we're going to do is css/styles.css, and that we're just making sure it matches the format here. So inside the public folder, it's css styles.css, okay? And then we can save that and close it. And now if we refresh back over here, it looks like it's lined up perfectly. And if we inspect element and we come up here to the head, we can see that it created this whole CSS link to a style sheet, and it accesses that styles.css, so it's working. Okay, so we're all set with that. The last thing that's not working is this horizontal rule. So let's just come back over here. And the reason it's not working is because I don't think you can have this horizontal rule outside of all these columns. So we'll just have to create another column MD12, and then we'll just have a horizontal rule inside of that. Okay, so now go ahead and save that and then refresh. And we have 2 horizontal rules now, so we're good to go. Okay, so next thing we want to do is inside of this content right here is we want to have all of our blog posts that you can look at with buttons next to all the blog posts that view or edit the blog posts. Now, the best way to do this is actually going to be a table. It's not bad to use a table, guys, if you're actually showing what we call tabular data, which is data that would be traditionally shown in a table. Where you're not supposed to use tables is for structuring a website, but you should not be doing that anyway. I don't think that we're using CSS and everything, right? We're way past tables and stuff like that. But tables are okay. A lot of people are afraid to use tables because you're told not to use tables in HTML. And really what you're told is not to structure your HTML pages with tables, but to actually use a table inside of it to show table data or tabular data. That's okay. That's actually what it's meant for, and that's why it's still in there. So we're going to create a table, and we're going to have all the blog posts in the table. Each row will represent a blog post. I'm going to come over real quick and just go to getbootstrap.com and show you the tables that are already set up for Bootstrap. If you come over here to CSS and then down on the side to tables, you can see that they've kind of already got a basic table here. They've got other table styles if you want to work on those, but I'm just going to work on the basic table example at the top. And you can see the code for that's actually really simple. We just open a new table and give it a class of table. So pretty simple. Okay, so let's come on over to our, let's come over here to Sublime. And you can see that the row here finishes up right here. This is the end of the row. And let's go ahead and just create another row. And inside of that row, we'll create another column that's just a full width column for all of our content. We want to put it in columns even though it's just one big column, just so it matches the top content. Okay, that's just the way the grid is set up for Bootstrap. Now inside of this column, we can create our massive table, give that table a class of table, and now we should have all the styling, the Bootstrap styling for our table. Now for those of you guys that haven't worked with tables very much, tables are broken into 2 portions, the TH, or the table head, and the table body. So we create an item called table head, and everything inside of this table head element is going to be part of that, basically that first row on your table that isn't really a row of data. It's just a row with headlines for those columns and stuff like that. So we're going to create that section. That's the T head. And then we need to create the individual columns inside of there. And that's what we do with the TH. Okay, so this is basically saying this is like one big row of headlines. And then these THs are individual columns. So that first column, I'm just going to put number sign there because it's going to be the ID number for the blog post. Okay. The next column in our table is going to be the title of our blog post. The third column is going to be the body of our blog post. The fourth one is going to be the created at. And then the fifth one is just going to be, we're going to leave it blank, but what it's going to be is it's going to have buttons that go to view or edit the blog post, okay? So it allows you to view the post or edit the post, and it will take you to the appropriate place. Okay, now I'm leaving it empty because I don't really want to have a headline that says anything there. We're just going to leave that headline blank, but I need to make it so that it matches when we have we can't have like 4 columns in our header and then 5 in our body. They need to match. The columns need to match, okay? So the first column's the number, the second one's the title, then the body, then the created at, and these will be the actions, but we're just gonna not have a label for it. Okay? Now, underneath the T head is where we want to create the T body. So you just simply create T body, and then this is where we're actually gonna have all of the rows for inside the body of the table. Now this is where we want to actually start pulling data from that posts object. So we have an object available to us inside of here called posts. And we want to grab a single post out of it and create a row out of that first post. Then we want to grab the second post out of that object and create a row out of that, and so forth until we run out of posts. The best way to handle this is with a loop. And we're going to use a loop that basically just runs as long as there's objects in that, as long as there's another post inside of that large object, that collection, it's going to keep running. When it runs out of objects, it's going to stop, and that's called a for each loop. Okay, we can do a for each loop with Blade by just doing @ for each, and then we're just going to go ahead and do parentheses and tell it the object that we want to loop through. In this case, it's called posts. All right. Then every time we loop through the loop, we want to have kind of a temporary variable that will represent the specific item that we're working on in this loop iteration, okay? And that object will obviously be rewritten every time we refresh the loop, okay? And then until we run out of objects. Okay, so we use as, and that just means, okay, go loop through posts as, and every time you hit a new object in posts, we're going to call that object whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to call it post. All right. So that way we can just identify the specific post that we're currently on in the loop. Okay. Let's finish up the loop with just doing end for each. And that just tells it that we're done with the loop. And now we can start creating the stuff for inside of the loop. Okay. So inside the loop, we want to create a new row. So every single time we have a new post, we'll create a new row for that post. And then we're going to go through and just basically set the information for this column, set the information for that column, and so forth all the way down the line. Now I'm going to throw a curveball for you real quick, and I want to have the actual ID number be bolded all the way down the side. So we're going to actually create a TH in here as well for the ID number, and then all the other ones will be normal columns, which are TD. Okay, so inside of here, what we want to do is grab the post that we're currently working with. We want to grab the ID number for that post. So let's use our Blade curly braces here. And then we're going to just do post, because that's the current post that we're on. And we're going to do post ID. And that'll pull the ID for the current post that we're on. Okay. Next, let's create another column. And this time we'll do TD because it's a normal column and not a header column. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do curly braces, post. And this time we're working on the title up here. That's the second column. So we'll do title. And we're just going to go through and do all of these. So TD, curly braces. This is the body. So we'll just do body. And then the fourth one here is going to be the created at. So we'll just do post, created at. And then the last one is our buttons, the action buttons. Okay. So let's just go ahead and create those. So we'll do an anchor tag. We'll come back to the links in a second here. And for this one, it'll say view. And then we're going to do another anchor tag, and this one will say edit. And so we'll just do edit. And we need to add a few classes to these buttons. Otherwise, it'll just be weird. It'll actually just be a link. So let's add a class of BTN that creates a button. And then we'll do BTN default, which just creates a white button, so it doesn't really stand out or anything like that. So we'll do button default, and then same thing on this other one. Let's do class BTN and BTN default. And that should be it. Let's go ahead and save the file, come back over to our project and refresh. And sure enough, we've got all of our blog posts. So we've got our view button, our edit button, the created at time. We've got our blog post and the name of it and everything like that. So it's working really, really good. In fact, we could even finish up right here. We could finish up the video. I'm going to go a little bit further and show you a few other things you might want to work on though. So first of all, our title looks good. The body though, you could see how having the whole body in here might be a bad idea. you don't need to necessarily show the whole body inside of an index file. So let's just go ahead and look at the abbreviated version for the body, and let's just show the first, say, 50 characters of the body, and then the rest of it you'll just look at when you view the full blog post. So this just gives you an idea of what's in there, but not all of the content. So we'll work on that. The other thing we want to work at is just making this a little bit nicer, the created at. We did that in the last video, so you guys already know how to do that. And then the last thing is just making sure these buttons work, because right now they don't go anywhere. Okay, so let's come back over to our project. And let's go ahead and just start with the first one, which is truncating the body. So we only want to show the first 50 characters of the body, and then the rest of it we'll just look at when we view the full blog post. That way it doesn't take up too much space. Now the way to access this is something called substring in PHP. In fact, I want to just show you real quick. Let's come over to our website, and we're just going to Google PHP Truncate String. All right? And this will tell you, this is kind of how you would find out how to do these things. It says return part of a string. We don't need the full string, just a part of it, right? And it tells you right here that we're going to use substring, returns parts of a string, and then it tells you how to do it right here. This PHP manual is so handy, guys. You guys need to understand how to use it. So basically, string just means it's going to return a string. This function that we've got returns a string, so we know what to expect. The function is called substring, substr. And then we've got the first parameter of this method is the string that we want to work on, that we want to extract out of. The second item, and it expects a string for that parameter. The second thing it expects is an integer, which will represent the start of the where to start when truncating or grabbing part of the string. And then these brackets represent like optional, meaning like if you don't have to do these, but you can. So optionally, you can add another integer for length, which means how far to go from the start point when you're truncating the string. And of course, how do you know all this? Well, it tells you right here all about it. So for start, this is called the start variable. It tells you that if you give them a non-negative integer in there, that it will start at that position in the string, counting from 0. So 0 is the first letter in the string. It even tells you right here as an example, A, B, C, D, E, F, 0 will be A, and 2 is C. All right, so the third letter is number 2, so it's just like an array. If you have a negative number as your start, it'll actually go that far from the back is where it's going to start. So that's kind of cool. It tells you all this cool stuff in here, guys, and you can read all of this stuff if you want as well, but we're just going to go ahead and move forward, and you can read that in your own time. So let's come back over to our project. We're going to go to body. And we're going to do, I'm just going to delete this real quick. We'll start over. So we'll do substr. There we go. It says it's expecting a string. Well, that string that we're going to use is called post body, right? We're going to pull the body from the post. Where do we want to start? We want to start at the beginning of the post. So we're going to go 0. And then we know that the next item is an optional how far to go, which is we're going to do 50 characters. So we'll pull the first 50 characters from there. Go ahead and save that and come back over to our project and see how it looks. Okay, so we got these super long ones. Let's go ahead and refresh. And as you would expect, we've only pulled the first 50 characters from there, and then it just cuts off. And if we want to click view, once we get these buttons working, we can click view and it will take us to that blog post. Okay. Now the last thing I keep thinking about here is what if we want to have, say, like a ... at the end. So we want to show that there's actually more here that's not being displayed. We would do like a ... right? So let's go ahead and let's take this one step further, and let's add a ... to the end of these strings if they get cut off. Now we don't want to add a ... to like this one because there's nothing cut off, okay? So we don't need one to that. We only need to do a ... if we cut something off, or if a string is more than 50 characters, then we know that something obviously got cut off. Let's come back over to our project. And what we're going to do is we're going to add that here in the same column that we've already got. Let's go ahead and just open up a new blade file. This basically creates like a new file, a new line in the file. So we'll open up a new blade and we're going to do an if statement here. But not just any kind of if statement. We're actually going to use the ternary operator, which is a really easy way to work with if statements in a single line of code. What we do is we do our conditional statement, and then we do a question mark, and then we'll do whatever we want to return if the conditional is true. And then we do a colon, and then we put in whatever we want to return if the conditional is false, okay? So it's conditional, question mark true, question mark, and then colon false. All right, I'll show you right here. So the conditional we want to do is we want to find the length of our body, and if it's greater than 50, then we know that something got cut off, right? Because we're taking the first 50 characters. And so that means that the string is, if the body is greater than 50, then obviously something got cut off. So then if that's true, we want to add the ... and if it's false, we don't need to do anything. Okay, so let's do that. So how do we find the length of a string? Well, you do strlen. You can obviously find this in the PHP manual. And then we need to give it our string that we want to test. In that case, it's post body. We already know that. And then we're going to say, hey, if that length is greater than 50, then we know we need to add the ellipsis. So we add a question mark there to say, hey, if it's true, then we're going to add this string ... to the end of our thing. And if it's not true, we need to do the colon, and we'll just do an empty string to mean do nothing. Okay? Let's go ahead and save that, come back to our project and refresh. And there we go. We have it has a ... right there. So that's awesome. And all right, so now let's go ahead and just make this date a little prettier. And then let's come through here and do the view and edit. Let's link those really fast as well. Okay, so we already know how to make the link pretty, all right? We did this in the last time. We do a date object, and we tell it how to format our this item from MySQL. So the first thing we need to do when we're creating a date is we're going to give it a string to represent the format we want to do. In this case, I'm going to do month, day, year, and just call it good. We're not going to get down to the seconds that we posted it. So in order to do that, and you can obviously go to the PHP manual for date and find all this information, but we're going to do M to show the month, and then a lowercase j to show the date, the day that it is in numbers, and then we're going to do a comma and then the year. So we just do capital Y for the year, and then that'll be the format we want to do. Then we do a comma, and then this is going to be the object or the date that we basically want to format. However, it can only format a Unix timestamp, as you remember. So we have to, we're going to have to take this post created at and convert it into a timestamp. So in order to do that, we do the same thing we did before, str to time, and we do post created at like that. Okay, and then that'll create a friendly date. Let's go ahead and save that. Last thing we want to do is link all of our buttons. Let's go ahead and just get rid of this href, and we're going to pass in a route, a named route for what we want to work on. So let's do our curly braces for blade, and then we're going to say, let's see, we're going to do route, and then what's the name of our named route? So in this case, we're going to view. So if we looked at our list of routes here, we have our show, post.show, and that will take you to show the individual post. However, we also need to pass in the ID for the post, okay? So let's come over to our routes here. We're going to say post.show, and then we need to pass a parameter in saying also tack on this ID number. And we want to do post ID to do the current ID that we have for our post, because we're going to loop through this. So the same ID we have up here is basically going to be linked into this route right here. Okay, and then we're also going to do it over here on this href. This one over here is for edit. So for edit, what we need to do is route, and then we'll do post.edit. And then just like before, we'll do a comma, and then we'll pass in the ID number for our post. So post ID, like that. Okay. Last thing is kind of a styling choice. I'm going to make the button small instead of normal size. So in class, we're going to do btn sm, which creates a small button. And then on this one over here, we'll do the same thing, btn sm, which is a small button. We'll go ahead and save that. And then let's refresh over here on our website. Okay, so we got an error. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Just so you know, whenever you get these parse errors, it's because you have a PHP error. A lot of people get frustrated with these errors because it doesn't tell you what's going on. It just always says parse error, and you get these this PHP line 37 or whatever. What this means is parse error almost always means there's a PHP error. So you're going to be looking for PHP syntax errors that you might have made along the way. Just so you know, when you get that error, that's what you're looking for. So let's head on over here and look for PHP errors. So line 37 is up here, which means that one worked fine. I don't even know if the line actually corresponds perfectly, but what we're looking for is PHP errors. So you want to be looking, we don't have semicolons here. We want to be looking for brackets. We want to be looking for parentheses, stuff like that. Spelling of stuff like that you might want to be doing. Making sure that you have the right number of parameters to a function. So like substring here, we want to make sure that we've, these parameters in the right order and stuff like that. Or if it's not expecting a string instead of an integer or something like that. That's what you're looking for when you get the parse error. Let's see. Okay, I see the error here, and it is a parse error. Under here for date, we open up a parentheses for date, and then we open up another parentheses for string to time, but we've only closed one of them. So let's add a second parentheses and save that, and then come back over and refresh, and there we go. Now it's working. So sure enough, we've got our truncated post with our ellipses. These items down here don't have ellipses, which is perfect. That's what we want. And then we've got our created at time, which is perfect. Again, that's what we want. And then we've got our buttons. And if we look down here at the bottom, you can see that the view and edit buttons work perfectly. And as we go down and look at all these other buttons, you can see that they correspond with whatever blog post they're pointing to. Okay? So here we've got all of our blog posts in an index file. This allows me to see my blog posts and then view and edit them and go to those appropriate pages. So if I click view, sure enough, I go to view and I can see that. I can obviously access edit from here, or I can access edit from here. Now the problem is that we don't have edit set up. As part of our CRUD application, we've finished read now, and the next thing is update or edit. Okay, so update and edit are basically the same thing, and that's what we're doing in the next video. I'll see you guys there.